Cool. Okay. I'm not exactly a tech whiz, so I always preface everything like, yeah, I've just had to figure everything out the best I can, and I've been going with that ever since. So, yeah. But welcome to another installment of They Came from the Underground, brand new podcast. Greetings from Podcastville, all that shit. In today's episode, we got Matt Banwart meeting from. You're from Iowa, right?
I'm from Iowa.
Where are you from in Iowa?
Uh, uh, I'll claim Ames. I'll claim I'm from Ames.
Claim Ames, right on. Not a lot of people that come from Ames that do comedy or anything. It's really a big music town, so that's pretty cool. Um,
Yeah, it definitely does have a more vibrant music scene.
yeah, definitely. I always like to joke that it's full of people who pretend like they don't want to be famous.
That's true. That's true.
I really feel like it is. Yeah, it's just like a matter of a lot of people who are like pretend or they're either trying really hard to live the hippie life, but they still like have jobs and everything to so they can afford to buy their scarves and
Exactly.
jeans to get dirty and all that jazz. So it's just one of those things. But yeah,
Yeah,
how
I'd probably
long?
choose either Ames or Des Moines. It's probably the two cities that I most identify as starting comedy in.
Yeah, definitely. Me too. Me too. Definitely. How long you been doing comedy now?
My first set was December 23rd, 2015.
Oh, nice.
So
That's what's up.
almost 5 years since I've done my first set, but I've probably been doing it more seriously for, I don't know, 3 years, I'd say.
Yeah, definitely. Was about 3 years ago the window when you moved to Chicago.
No, I started
Chicago.
when I started when I was a student at Iowa State University. But I've been in Chicago for about like a year and a half now, almost.
Oh, okay. I was kind of thinking it had been a little longer, but I did
It
not know
feels
for
like it.
sure. Yeah, definitely. Oh, I bet. Yeah. How's it been in Chicago comparatively to old Iowa?
Yeah, I mean, I do comedy in Chicago now. It's been great. I mean, like the it's so different because I've been fortunate that even before I moved to Chicago, I was doing comedy in some smaller. I traveled and I've done shows in like
Yeah.
Omaha and Minneapolis and Cleveland and Billings, Montana. I've done shows kind of all Spokane, Washington. I've done shows kind of all over in smaller places.
Oh yeah.
But it's definitely being in like a bigger city or like one of the I don't know if other people use it, but Chicago people um sometimes use the terminology of like the big three of like Chicago, LA, New York.
Mm-hmm.
But being in one of the big three is definitely like a very different beast.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I believe it. Because Chicago's always been one of those places that you hear when you're in this lane, whether you're like a high school actor or doing comedy afterwards, is that Chicago's got a real bustling scene of because they hear about like Second City or whatever,
Yeah.
and so everyone has. So Chicago's almost kind of like that. I almost kind of see it. I feel like I'm not the only one, but I almost kind of see it as like the place you would go before you made the jump to like somewhere like New York or Los Angeles, because it doesn't seem like it would be as big or like doesn't get quite the same kind of clout that the other ones do just for being um, so long established. But um, Chicago
Yeah.
has always seemed like it'd be a really dope place to go to practice and get just like a lot of runs in and get a lot of reps and all that jazz. How's it been in your experience?
No, I mean I think that's like a pretty smart way of describing it. Like it definitely feels like it's like the middle ground or the middle stepping stone. Uh I mean like then that could be like a controversial statement in the city because I think some comedians here are like live and die. Like I'm staying in Chicago,
Right.
no matter what
Uh-huh.
happens to me. But the way I view Chicago right now, and this is always like an always changing like view of the city and what the comedy scene is, and especially like during the other pandemic, it's a little bit weird.
Right.
But the view that I was starting to develop of the city um, is like of that, of like there's so much opportunity to get stage time, and there's also a good amount of like quality clubs.
Right.
Especially within the city, there's like the Zanies, the Comedy Bar, and the Laugh Factory are probably the three like
Oh yeah,
most most like corporate or most like sought after.
big time.
Corporate's not the right word. Yeah, they're like most like, exclusive clubs to get into.
Right. They're the names you're like very likely to hear from like touring comics, like Zanies or something like that. Like at least if you listen to as much shit as I do. But yeah, that's those are definitely names that like even that like especially even me at just a year in, like a little over a year, like just trying to map out a path. Like I know about those places, and it's all places I plan to go to at some point.
Yeah, for sure. And they and each of them kind of there's different ways into each of them, and that's something I've learned is, like every kind of venue has its own way to kind of get past is the term I'd use to get past at them. But yeah, I mean I'm lucky as of a week and a half ago I did my first guest spot at the comedy bar at the weekend shows.
Oh fuck yeah!
Yeah, I did an open mic there, and they have this open mic where you have to spin a wheel, and there's like different challenges you'd get. And I got crowd work, and I really do enjoy doing crowd work a lot. And I in Chicago, the one detriment to as opposed to like doing shows in like Iowa or Omaha or like kind of some of these smaller scenes is like in these smaller scenes you can get like doing your first 15 is like more accessible, but as like in Chicago, like most of my friends like haven't even done like 15-20 minute sets just because it's so hard to get them in the city, especially like at like quality venues. Like you can produce your own show and you can give yourself 15 there.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
like in Iowa and Omaha, it's easy for like some shady producer is going to throw up a bar show somewhere and give you the first headlining spot.
Very true. Yeah, that's accurate. There's people and right now that's what's so fun. That's what's so funny is there are people doing shows, and a lot of them that I've seen are in like backyards. It's like a whole bunch of people in one neighborhood who own golf carts, and it's and they're all pulled up on their cart watching, and just like driving up slowly to the stage, like here's a beer, and then driving back. Like I think it was Jared Dog. I think did that, but they Cody Tiano, with Cody Tiano, and it's a very interesting picture. It looks like it just looks like if we didn't have the context of COVID, it just looks like some rich suburban assholes were like, I think it'd be really cool to just like do like a comedy show in the backyard. Like we like watching those Netflix specials.
Yeah,
Let's use some of them. Let's get our golf friends together. I mean, they don't golf, but they got golf carts, and so then they can all just drive over and drink and.
Yeah, no, it's definitely been weird. But yeah, I don't know what I was getting at earlier, but yeah, no, definitely if we're gonna talk about like those like the outdoor shows, it's been like super bizarre in that sense of like there's a lot of them in Chicago, but they're all open mics. Well, I mean, I guess one of them kind of became a showcase. There's the Out in the Open mic, which they do like a different park every day. It's actually raining right now, so I assume none of them are going on right now.
Probably not.
But Out in the Open mic is like an open mic that's out in parks, and then there's the comedy pickup, which is a open mic. Sometimes it's a showcase, and they do shows out of the back of a pickup. Guys, a speaker system,
cool.
A generator he kind of has set up in the back of his pickup, and they traveled cross country with that recently.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it was really cool. So they did the comedy pickup. There's that. I haven't even done this show or gone to the Stoop, which is an outdoor show as well. It's on the step of a building.
Nice.
And there's one I just discovered this one like last week. I don't know how long it's been going on, but Chicago has Lake Michigan, so there's like this big kind of like lake community and like sailing community. They've been doing shows out of a boat.
Wow.
Where the boat is on the water, and then there's like they pull up to like an amphitheater, a natural amphitheater like on land, and the boat docks, and then the performers stay in the boat and the people stay on the grass.
That's
or on
so
the steps. Yeah.
Oh man.
So I'm trying to get on that. I'm trying to get on that boat show. Like
I fucking don't blame you. How often do you get to do comedy in the form of someone just like fuck, what was that? I just like I just lost the comparison to what that reminded me of.
Essentially a cruise comic.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like, but at least you get to get off the ship and escape if it goes badly.
Exactly.
It's basically like yelling announcements at someone, but like everyone's like, "Why is this guy yelling at us?" And then you say the word "dick," and they're like, "Oh, okay." I don't think I've been listening. But
yeah, well, that's like a common joke people make, especially at the comedy pickup, is like you know, if someone walks by, it's like, don't worry, this is a Trump rally, or don't worry, we're inciting violence, because it looks like, because they're on top of a truck, you know, the microphone looks like you're just yelling at people. It looks like
Uh-huh.
looks like you're starting some sort of like sketchy
Right.
like socialist movement where you're like, down with
Yeah.
the big business, or like
Yeah, you're preaching.
yeah, like
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Like you're about to start like a church or something.
You
So it
may
looks
as well be on a soapbox for real.
yeah, for real. So the comedy pickup and I need to do the boat show, and there's Dead Grass, which is a show in someone's backyards. They have a lot of them in Chicago that have
Pretty
popped
funny.
up, but the clubs are now opened. I think it's at 40% capacity, and they're really strict. Like I do a lot of shows at this venue called the Lincoln Lodge, which is this like it's a newly opened club, but it's really quickly up and coming,
Nice.
and a lot of, I mean, not to too. I run a show out of there, but there's a lot of other great producers that run shows at Lincoln Lodge right now that are kind of blowing up, and uh, yeah, I don't know, it's just like they just started doing indoor stuff again too.
Right.
So and they have like, I don't know how it is. Well, I've done shows in Des Moines recently, but they have like plastic barriers like behind by everyone's booths, and like, you know, you're far apart and you have to wear masks the whole time you're inside. Illinois is pretty strict on COVID regulations, but
Yeah,
everyone wears masks everywhere here. It's pretty, people are really good at it.
that's good. That's definitely handy. Well, that's definitely seeming to be what's going to help us get on track to just opening regularly. So that went up, but um, excuse me. Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. It's always good to hear that places are finding a way to pick up, because, like, I mean, here we have the like all the mics and stuff are running again, but even Teehees can't do double shows like they were doing, like
Yeah.
2 a night on the weekends, because they don't have time to sanitize in between everything. So they just do the one show and then they can prepare it and just clean up and be good. But there's all the mics, but then but then Teehees is also the only mic that really gets a good crowd. Everywhere else is basically just all the comics right now. Just we're trying to hang on to whatever kind of skill they've developed so far, and it's getting their fix and trying to resume, trying to live life as normally as possible. Um, I know what you meant. And before you were saying it's harder to get like longer spots, like 15, 20-minute sets. And um, definitely
Yeah.
there is only a couple shows that happen that in Des Moines that you can get that. And they're all at Teehees. Those are the only ones like regularly focusing on putting on a comedy show.
Yeah, I mean
And
that's, well, even like sets longer than 5 minutes. Like in Chicago,
yeah,
everyone does 3 to 4 minute sets, and so
right.
I think I was trying to get at this earlier, but when I was talking about the comedy bar, I originally did my first guest spot there, and it was like a 7 minute set. The owner or the booker, or I
Oh,
don't
very
know,
nice.
whoever, I don't know what her
It
position
don't
is, but
matter.
she had me do a crowd work set, and she was like, "Hey, great set. You know, this weekend I want you to come by, and I'm gonna give you
Hell
a
yeah.
guest spot on the show, and you know, I've seen you here before, blah blah."
That's
And so it was
dope.
like a very nice thing, and I didn't even know who the person was. So
Right.
I did the show on the Saturday. It was a Friday show. I did the show, went great, and it was one thing where it was like, she was like, "Oh, hey, that's a really seamless, you know, 7 minute set."
Yeah.
And you know, as someone who started off in Iowa and doing like um, these smaller cities, you know, these smaller scenes, or mid-market cities, whatever you want to call them, you know, being able to do this longer set was nice, because now in Chicago, a lot of comedians would struggle with 7 minutes. You know, it's like, oh, I
Yeah.
only need 3 minutes, I only need 3 minutes.
Right.
But for me, a 7 minute is like a very familiar time slot. It's like, oh yeah, I do my tight seven, you know.
Hell yeah.
You know, let's do half of my 15 or whatever. Like,
Right.
so that was very nice, and something that I was able to transition to better. And that's why, you know, a big ups to starting in Iowa, and even be able to
Yeah.
do 5 minute sets,
Yeah.
because in Chicago, you didn't even really have that.
You're right. Yeah, I can imagine that it's I assume the sets are only 3-4 minutes in Chicago, because it's just a much larger community that they have to try to cycle through.
Yeah.
Whereas here, for sure, like everyone gets 5 minutes. Like there's no skin off anyone's back. Like even one or two of the mics is like so small that we'll typically that a lot of times we'll just do six. Just do six. It's like
Which
not
one's
gonna
that? Can
matter.
I ask? Is it the one in
That'll be
Ames?
That's like Java Joe's. Yeah, at the 4th Street Theater.
Oh, Chopper Show. Yeah, okay, I remember that mic in Des Moines.
Yeah, I've been hosting that this month, because the usual host is in a play, but I have not even tried to go see it yet. I think I was going to, and I forgot. But um, But shout out Greg Romans. So I took over hosting that for him. But
Nice.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
no.
we can do 6 if we want.
Is that also on Thursdays?
Yeah, that's right before
Teehees.
Teehees, yeah, which is kind of annoying because they also added in this thing called the No Shame Theater, which is at Teehees right before the Teehees open mic, and it starts at like the exact same time as the Java's open mic. So it just kind of becomes a conflict of like
Is that
where
a
you can
mixed
go.
art? Is that a mixed art open mic? Is that what No Shame Theater is?
Yeah, it's like and definitely this last week everything was dead just because there was a COVID scare within the community, and so it was kind of dead this week. But it was what I went for the first time this last week because I was just a few minutes late to Java's and they closed, and they were like, "Oh, I didn't think you were coming." I was like, "I'm only like 8 minutes late," but whatever. And so then I went over to Teehees and check out No Shame for the first time, and it was all magicians. And then Cooper Patterson played a serious song on guitar, which I didn't expect, like because of how his comedy's been. I
Yeah.
anticipated him going up and being serious for a minute, then switching to buttholes or just storming off the stage or something.
Yeah.
But it was, but yeah, that's what No Shame is. And so, I mean, it's not like the same thing. And so,
I mean, when I first started doing comedy, because Ames has like Ames used to have for the longest time just one open mic, and that was they had other open mics, but they were only 21 plus, so I could never do them because I started when I was in college. I started comedy when I was 18.
oh,
And I was
nice.
a student at Iowa State University in Ames,
A
which
lot of
is like,
longtime comics would say I'm sure would say they wish they started at 18.
yeah. I mean, I'm very fortunate that I realized there was something I wanted to do at that age.
Yeah.
But they used to just have the M Shop open mic, which was university run, and it
Oh, yeah.
it's funny. It used to be open to the public, like anyone could go perform at the open mic. But then,
Right.
um, can I tell you the story real quick? I don't
Oh,
know
of course. Yes.
yeah, okay,
By all
cool.
means.
It used to be like open to the community to perform, but then there was these two comedians and three comedians that were not students that like here. I'm not gonna say their names, but neither of them do comedy anymore.
Mm,
Well, neither of them are in Des Moines anymore, but I'm not gonna say their names. So
okay.
these two comedians that were based out of Ames at the time went up and performed just like these dirty and like just like incredibly unfunny too.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those things like you'd be like, oh, it's the crowd that was bad, but these comedians were just like not good,
Yeah.
and they were not
I know that.
like one of them was like one of the jokes they said, oh, this person, whatever, I don't care, they're not gonna listen. One of the jokes this person said was like, yeah, I used to get raped by the Grinch, but that's because I thought green meant go, and it was like,
What the
what?
fuck?
Like that's not even like a. And
Yeah.
I remember, and this person was bombing, and I remember to this day, I remember like it was like it was like a hot room, like filled with like a 40-person open mic,
Oh shit.
crammed in, small space, student venue. The room was hot. I
Yeah.
just went up and had a good set before. I was like, hell yeah, they inherited a good room, and
Fuck
they're
yeah.
bombing, and they're just saying these just like dirty things without
Uh,
punchlines, and it was so uncomfortable. I remember like balling up in my seat, and at the Green Means Go line,
ugh.
the producer of the venue was behind me, and the comedian goes, what, didn't you get the joke? I'll say it again. So I used to get raped by the Grinch, and the producer behind me of the venue goes, oh, please stop. Just like in the mousiest voice ever, just like,
Right.
please stop doing that.
It just doesn't quite have it. Is just in such shock that she hasn't found her voice back yet to just be like, stop.
Yeah, it was
By
like,
the love of God.
but it was like this other comedian went as well, and he had this bit where he was like, I don't remember the joke, but it was like, I was getting fucked in the ass at a nightclub, and I was high on Malady, and I tell you what, that's true ecstasy. And I was like, which is like funny when I say it, but like like that joke surrounded by a set of just like non-funny, non-jokes.
Yeah.
And then another, and none of these are people who are students. These three comedians were not students. And another one went up and they had a bit. It wasn't even a bit. They just told a story of how they learned to masturbate, how their friend was jerking off in front of them, and they were trying to get off while looking like a poster of Stone Cold Steve Austin. They're like, so I asked my friend, show me his penis, and it's like this whole like weird story.
Yeah.
And, like I remember everyone in the room was like, where's the punchline? Like why like it wasn't fun. It's like the story of this person just talking about like fifth graders, like it was just gross and profane.
Yeah.
And so And that was, I think, 2016, 2017. And so ever since then, that open mic that's been going for like 50 years, that's when they cut it off and it became students only. Was that night. And I remember being there that night and being like, I just remember hating them because they were like
Yeah.
old, all these comedians were like in like their mid 20s.
Right.
And I remember like being like 18, 19, just being like I was very cocky when I started because I would see people bomb like that and I would go up and I could relate to the room because it was all college kids,
Yeah.
and I could relate. And I was always clean early on, and so I was like, I never bombed like that. I bombed, but I never bombed like where I'd like people
Right.
like bawling up kind
Yeah,
of
people
bomb.
were just incredibly uncomfortable and no one is enjoying it whatsoever. Like not even in like a meta way of like me
Yeah,
laughing at you retelling the story where it's like
yeah.
hilarious to think that people went
Oh,
up there and were like, this is funny.
because if it was a room of comedians, the other comedians would be laughing at them. I thought it was the
Yeah,
funniest thing ever. I
exactly.
remember just being like, this is so good. These people are so bad.
Uh-huh.
But I
That's
remember like
exactly it.
it's not something like they were bad. Is they were bad, and then like afterwards it'd be like, hey, do you need any advice? Do you want to learn how to do comedy from the real pros? We did this for like 3 years, and I was just like a year into
Oh
comedy, just
God.
being like, I don't want to be 3 years in comedy and be doing what you're doing. I don't want to be I don't want to be 28 and going back and doing open mics at like
Yeah,
college and like bombing like that. Like
exactly.
I just remember. And so anyway, what I was getting at is I used to do a lot of mixed art, non-comedy open mics. Yeah, talk about mixed art open mics at the
uh,
No Shame Theater. But yeah, there's like
yeah,
music open mics and poetry open mics and Ames that I would go to, and I would perform at just to get stage time, and I would be the only guy
right.
doing comedy there.
Yep.
And it
I've
was
thought
like,
about doing that a couple times, and I've thought that exact thing. I was like, I don't do I want to walk into a poetry slam or something where it's like a bunch of like deep rooting people who think that they're more clever than they are, all trying to take each other so seriously that they like will somehow form a record company just out of their presence together and then be like, fuck the system. They have this weird mentality of just like what we got going on is unique and you wouldn't understand it. In fact, no one here understands it, but they understand it. And I have definitely realized that what they understand is just that they have to live in denial. Like they
yeah,
can't it's a lot of just like these are our people, we're too serious, like how dare you laugh at these things, like it's the
yeah,
kind of culture that when wokeness came up they were pretending to have been that way for like 5 years already. And
yeah.
so,
And
yeah.
I mean, I don't like, and like this is like I don't know, maybe even a controversial opinion. I don't even mind political correctness. Like, I honestly doesn't like even bother me. Like, uh, but like what I'm trying to think of what I'm trying to say here with this is like just because I've always been able to adapt. But like, yeah, and it aims that definitely exists just in the
Oh
comedy
yeah.
community there of like, or the music community of like this like there's hippies and Ames, but they're not like real hippies. Like there's hippies and Ames, but it's like, yo, you're not like a Boulder, Colorado hippie.
Yeah,
You're not
exactly.
like you're trying to be from Boulder. Like go move,
Yeah,
go be a real hippie someplace else.
it's very aesthetic-y. It's like they just like living in the image of.
Yeah. Oh, what I was trying to say is I ended up doing pretty good at those open mics because I kind of was like never a very controversial um, comic. I mean, I just
Right.
like I early. Do you know who Owen Benjamin is by chance?
I know the name, but I don't believe I've met them.
Well, you uh he no longer does comedy. I don't think he does, but he's like this. If you look him up, he's been in movies. He was like friends with Adam Sandler back in the day, and Owen he came to the college and he performed at the university. And I was a student, and I asked the student union board. I was like, hey, I'm like the only guy right now that does stand-up comedy at this college. Now there's a whole
Yeah.
group community that does it now, which is awesome. But I was like, hey, can I open for this guy who's coming through, Owen Benjamin? Owen Benjamin, by the way, is like a neo-Nazi now. He's done InfoWars.
Oh no.
He's like so like he moved to upstate New York and became like a woodcutter with his brother, and now
Oh
he has
wow.
like a he's he's like suing what is it, Patreon or whatever. He's like insane. He's like a nut job.
Wow. And that's so funny learning about that sort of thing because I had only like just recently really started to learn about him. Like I it was one of those things where you realize you're kind of vaguely familiar with them, but you didn't really know their name. And it was
Well,
kind of like,
Owen,
oh, that guy. And so now that like that's finally coming up, and now that like that's the information about him. Like, oh, okay, I can see why he might be
yeah.
in the news a little bit.
So I met him right before he went like full nut. Like he was like so I opened for him at this college show. The last college show I think he ever did was Iowa State University, and I remember I was in the green room with him, and I'd opened for another comedian. The comedian I opened for before him was like a total jerk, but
Oof.
Owen was the exact guy in the green room, and he was super nice to me. He was like, I was new to
Nice.
comedy, I was super new, super green, super new, whatever you want to say. And I was just like, hey, I'm new, blah blah.
I
And
was a
I
I
asked him
was
a
a, I
few
was a
questions.
Green New Deal, and he could pick up on that.
Yeah. But well, anyway, he took out his phone. He goes, "Hey, I record my phone. I have this podcast with a big following. He was like 500 episodes in, big following on his podcast." He said, and he's
Yeah.
like, "Would you be on? I'd love to have you on it." And he puts me on his podcast, and he's asking me questions, and it's all like pretty like standard, fun, goofy questions. Like, I'm warming up for my show, doing this guy's podcast,
Yeah.
and he goes, "So, what do you think about Muslims in America, huh?" And I remember just being like, "I think this guy's like a little bit nuts, right? He's a
Ooh,
little bit."
yeah.
He was like, I was like, this guy's like,
He was
so first he was
buttering
like,
you. He was buttering you up so he could drop a bombshell on you, and you'd be like,
yeah.
"Oh, like I trust you."
And I remember
Like,
just being like,
frankly, I think they shouldn't be here.
I remember like just laughing off, being like, ha ha ha, good one, okay. Just like,
Right.
no, and then he did a show, and he did great on the show. But throughout his whole set, it was so funny. I actually talked to someone who was at the show recently, that like, at that one show. It was like the one show they watched me do in college. And they're like, yeah, who's that headliner? Where he'd tell a joke and the whole room would laugh. And then afterwards he'd be like, he would like yell at the room for being too PC. And it's like, what? We all laughed at it. Like, what do you mean?
What the fuck?
Like I remember he'd tell a joke and it was like a good joke and the whole room would laugh. And he goes, yeah, I saw you pulled away. You're all pussies. And it was like,
Oh
but we just
God.
laughed. Like, stop
Right.
calling us pussies. Like,
Jesus.
we're doing good.
Yeah, you're right.
Like,
And the
we're
more he
laughing
does
at
that, yeah, the more he's doing
So
that, the more they're
Owen,
pulling away.
so Owen ruined his comedy career. He was in like The House Bunny and like other. I think he did a few movies with Adam Sandler, but he's a bigger
Oh,
comedian that
yeah.
counts himself. What I'm trying to get at, this has been a long story to get there, is one of the things he said in the green room to me, and I was like 18, so like super impressionable. Is he goes, I do dirty comedy. He says, I love my dirty jokes, and he says, but college shows pay so much more money in corporate doing shows, doing office parties, and
Yeah.
casinos. He goes, cruise ships. He says, if you can do clean, you'll make so much money early on, and you'll be able to sustain yourself early on. If you want to send it and be a comedian, he said, learn to do clean first, and then get dirty. Because he said you can always get into the clubs, but if you can get clean early on, you can make the money to live, and then
Right.
get dirty. And I remember just being like, I was already clean to begin with, but I remember just being like, okay, I'll just keep doing this. Like,
Yeah.
and like also, who wants to hear like opinions on sex from an 18-year-old?
Yeah.
Like yeah. So I'm with my first girlfriend ever, right? Like, you know what I mean?
I
Like,
made it to 2 minutes.
like yeah, I have no comparison. I'm like,
Right, yeah, exactly. She still hasn't come yet. I will come back with updates.
yeah, exactly. Like I bought a pack of condoms and I've yet to use any of them in college.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I'm
so
not the one you need for dating.
exactly. So I remember like being like yelling, and no one wanted to hear my opinion on adult things or like politics. And so being 18, like being like, no one wants to hear your opinion on anything dirty.
Yeah.
So I just, and this guy's like, don't do dirty. And I just already wasn't. It's just not necessarily who I was. It kind of pushed in the direction of doing like clean. I mean, I tell a lot of dirty stuff now, but
You're right.
but definitely like the PC hippie crowd, an alt-right guy made me PC on accident.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's kind of how I was getting with there. His own bench. I remember he told me, he was like, I opened for Louis C.K. at an event for the staff of Disney. And he was telling me that's like, I went for Louis C.K. at this Disney event. And he goes, they paid me $10,000 to do 20 minutes. And he says, all because I could do 20 minutes clean. So yeah, you bet I can do clean. And I just like, yeah, $20,000 to do 20 minutes of stand up, like, okay.
Fucking of course.
He's like, yeah, and that's what he was telling me too. He said, he's like, Louis C.K. at the time was like my idol. He's like, Louis C.K. Been doing comedy for 35 years, and only in the last 10 of it has he been able to sustain it off of his club work. But for the first 20,
Yeah.
Louis was making his money doing corporates, and I was just like,
Right.
okay, if that's what, if he says it, like if that's what I
Yeah.
have to do, then I'll learn. I'll get my first 45 minutes clean, and
Of course.
yeah. So that was kind of like a very formative thing. That
That's a very logical step to action. Money's a very powerful motivator. And yeah, to like hearing 10,000 for 20 minutes gives like unfortunately can lead to an unrealistic expectation.
Yeah, I've yet to
You
even hear
know?
that. I'm nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah, like for Disney with Louis. Like that's a very special
Yeah,
scenario that worked out. Yeah.
that is the highest paid corporate show you can get. Like that
Yeah,
is like
yeah, exactly. That's not like some Montreal thing where it's like, well, do you just go? I don't know. Like it's
yeah.
like you just go hope for the best, and it's like yeah, they might and then they'll bring you on like it's a very specially requested set there. So that's such a whiz. So that's definitely a horrible example to try to lead someone on of like, hey, you do clean, you can get paid 10 grand for 20 minutes. You get to do it with Louis.
Yeah.
It's by for Disney.
Yeah,
Probably get a
Louis
movie.
C.K. will be your best friend. And I'm like, damn, okay, I'll do it. Like
Right.
I'll cut the effort out of my set.
Yeah,
But no,
shit. Man.
that was
Knowing
like a
what we
very
know
like
now, that's kind of an ironic twist on Louis thing.
yeah. I mean, well, he
Getting
was
paid so much to work clean, and then like here we are.
yeah. I mean, and I definitely like it didn't. Yeah, I still wrote dirty jokes and told them, but it was just like
Those are
early
just
on,
for
like
me.
yeah. When I tell them at other places, but I just remember early on, I would tell like a dirty joke, and like older comedians would like make fun of me for it, like. So
Yeah.
I was like, but now that I'm 23, so I'm not old, but like I'm old enough where like people are more susceptible to my
Yep.
opinions on other things and
Yeah.
whatnot. So
Definitely. Yeah. 100%. That's something that I kind of live in
how old
mentally.
are you right now? Can I ask?
I am 24 right now, 25 next month.
Oh yeah,
Send gifts, listeners. PO box now, but I will be 25, and I am kind of working on. I kind of have like this a bit of a premise. It's like it gets a laugh, but it's not like fully formed. I feel like I could go
yeah,
further, but I just have like this. I have a kind of a bit. It's just like I just finally got a physical like this year that like for the first time. My doctor was like, "Okay, we got to take a look at your junk." And I was like, "All right, well, that I've heard that this is a thing, and it made me feel old." And I was like, since it was the first time, it makes me feel like I'm around the corner from a finger in the ass, and I'm not ready for it
yeah.
because it's like because it makes me feel old to like have to have new parts of me checked. But
I like that.
it's the idea. But that's just the idea I'm working on. But that's where I'm at. I think shit, and I just forgot what got me on to even getting into that. But oh yeah, we were talking about how seriously people take you, but. At 20 I started at 20 probably I started at 23 but like late in the year, and
That's
so
when most people do it. Most people start like I'm at the age where like most people start around like 22, 20 to like 25ish. I feel like, and
yeah,
so now it's fun because like I'm actually like doing shows with people that are within my age range, which is like oh
right,
sweet like but the kind of I don't want to say frustrating, but like the annoying thing is like so now there's people that are my age that are now getting into the open mics and doing comedy in Chicago
mm-hmm.
and it's like oh great I'm doing comedy with all these other people that are 20 but they're only like a year in or like they've been doing it for like 3 months and so it's like
uh-huh
they're like yeah we should be friends and like I'm friends with a lot of them but it's like a lot of it's like
yeah,
but they're like and then they'll look at me and they'll be like hey you're my age why did you just get this guest spot at the club or like hey you're
right,
my age why have why did I just did shows in Denver? Why did someone fly you out to do shows in Denver? And I'm like, well, it's because
uh-huh
I've been doing this for
yeah,
5 years, and like I've got connections and a
yeah.
booker
And it's
saw me.
not, yeah,
Like,
and it's not just the amount of time that you put in either. It's like you're active on social media and like you've been for one, and then you also talk to people and you create connections and like you've gone to places on your own to like make your presence known and out there. And so
yeah,
it's just like, it's all these things I think that definitely some people don't think of or aren't aware of or like I mean, whatever the reason is, whether they just don't want to accept it or are lazy. It's like they act like because of getting a little bit of clout or maybe just like a little maybe their friend told them to do well so now they think that they should be at the same position. It's like if you need that's why knowing how long someone did it can be important because like someone doing it for 5 years it's like I fully expect them to be getting on some shows and be like a regular in the scene, be like known.
yeah,
But like someone who's only been doing it a year like right now in Iowa because so many of because the selection I had talked to Dave Kilbride about this kind of briefly the other day, but there's a possibility that with the fact that COVID's happening, we don't have all of the comics out prevalent in the scene at the moment, that it's possible that a lot of people are being pulled on because there isn't the people who would normally be there to be put on.
Yeah, and also, and I was just telling someone this too. They're talking about Iowa, in Chicago. I was explaining to someone from Chicago and Iowa. But yeah, I mean, Iowa just doesn't have like the same number of like Chicago. There's like probably like 300 comedians. I would consider, I don't know, maybe 200 comedians.
That's a
That
lot.
if I made a list, that could probably headline, right? They could do 20 minutes or 25
Oh yeah,
minutes, right?
right.
A feature at a club or whatever. And there's out of those probably 100 that are good.
Yeah,
But like, as opposed to Des Moines, where like I'm not gonna name names and make a list, but there's probably like 4 that I'd consider to be quality headliners, and then maybe 10 total that can do 20-25 minutes and
yeah.
headline a club spot, and
Mm-hmm.
um so it's so much easier to get to the point of like headlining a club in Des Moines. Like Tiki's is a good club where like I think you can pretty quickly, in comparison to like clubs in Chicago,
Yeah,
like Tease is a club where it may seem like a mountain, in Des Moines. In Chicago would be like a very accessible club. You'd call it like a,
yeah.
I've started using the term of like A, B, C clubs, like A clubs, B clubs, C clubs.
I see that. Yeah,
Tease is like probably an a B or a C club, and then Funny Bone would be like an A club, right?
yeah.
Like
100%. Yeah.
the Funny Bone would be like the Laugh Factory, the Comedy Bar, Zanies, right?
Yep.
And they do no outreach to the local. They do very little outreach to the local comedy community. They just started
Yeah.
right before I left. But
Yeah.
yeah. So like it's easier to get on in some of the clubs in Iowa and
Right.
get like those headlining credits. Like you can be like, yeah, I've headlined the Backline in Omaha and Teehees
Yeah.
and Des Moines
And the
and
backline is where a lot of the shows that are happening with Des Moines comedians right now, like a few Des Moines comedians like Dave Kilbride and Haley Call and Cooper Patterson and Coral TD, like have all kind of taken over that Omaha scene right now.
yeah, I mean, and I'm sure there's plenty of great comedians from Omaha that should be headlining Des Moines. I think, yeah, I mean, I don't want to. There's a lot of great headliners in Omaha, actually, like a surprising number. There's probably like maybe 20. I know one of them just moved out, but I know that there's probably like, I don't know, 15
Yeah.
or 20 comedians from Omaha that should be
Right.
doing Des Moines more regular than they are.
Yeah, definitely.
But I mean, I have a show at Teehees where I bring comedians from Chicago, and because of COVID, I've been able to get like comedians with very legitimate last show I had Sarab, who did stand-up comedy on NBC, and then
Yeah.
Chris Higgins, who runs Friday Beers, which is an Instagram page with 1 million followers, and I've been able to pull like comedians with just like massive credits and followings, and to do Des Moines, which has like been
Hell yeah.
awesome.
Right. Yeah.
But and then next month, November 20th, I'm gonna have Vic Pandia, who's and Meg, who both of them had the #1 album on iTunes.
Oh shit.
At different years.
That's what's up.
And it's just like, because of COVID, I've been able to pull really great comedians and
Yeah.
come up to Des Moines, which I'm super stoked about.
That's super cool. Yeah, I haven't had I haven't been able to go to either of the couple shows that you've had here crossing the Mississippi.
Yep, that's what it's called, the Crossing the Mississippi show at Tees. But
Yeah.
that's when a show I've just been able to pull like just A-list talent and get them to Des Moines for like
Hell yeah.
very reasonable ticket price.
Right. Yeah, dude, and that's super cool about it. And right now there's definitely like a wave going of because one thing is it's always like a fun it's a very funny reality to kind of like live in the comedy community and be like, oh man, like because where the world is right now, like white guys aren't exactly in high demand. And so there's like actually like, and so there it's like maybe it's but also like in the Iowa scene that's kind of prevalent. But it's just like it's hard, but also like you can't be mad at it. It's like if you really look at it, you're like, yeah, but there definitely needs to be representation for everything.
Well, honestly, like I don't even think it's necessarily like representation. I just love hearing like, just because like for years and this isn't like a knock or anything, but it's like for years there's been like the era of like, you know, middle class Caucasian comedians, like that
Yeah,
perspective is very worn out. Like
it
like
is.
there's only so much I can hear the differences, like men and women, or like my wife is such a bit, like, you know, very
Yeah, yeah.
typical,
It has to
almost
come
like
from a
dad
very
material.
personal place. If it's not like if it's not real personal, it starts to get a little generic.
But like so a comedian I had last time in Des Moines, you know, Sarab talked about how I was growing up Persian in America, which is like super funny and like a unique perspective. And Sarab's like
Yeah,
a killer. I mean, one of the best writers I know, and I've had the opportunity to work with. But he comes up and he does his jokes about being Persian in America, and it's just unique joke. Like he jokes that I
yeah,
could have never thought of, you know, or
exactly.
even say. And he has a great joke where he's like, "I'm such a loudmouth. Like I could have never been a terrorist." And people always accuse me of being a terrorist growing up. Like
Right.
I would have let it out, you know, September 8th. I would have been at a bar just like, oh man, oh yeah, I'm here for business.
Yep, exactly.
And that's his joke, and that's a killer. And he has a whole, you know, his whole set is this perspective that I could never have. And there's even like comedian Chris Higgins out at the last one. Higgins did a bit about, he's from Colorado, and he looks like a Labrador dog, Chris Higgins, and he has jokes about looking like a Labrador. And so he has this unique perspective because he looks like a dog. He's a Caucasian male, but at the same time his
Yeah.
perspective is different because he does look like a dog, and he has all these jokes about it, you know.
Yeah.
And so whether it be your own look or your own aesthetic, I think there is definitely like, it's important to like to stick out in some way. And for some people, their identity is a very easy way to stick out.
Oh yeah,
But at the same time, you also have to be a good joke writer. And so
big time.
I think identity can give you a boost in comedy, but I don't think it can make you. I think there's a lot of comedians
Yep.
that you know, like Gabriel Iglesias, you know, isn't just funny because he's a large Hispanic man. He has jokes that ride on it, but also Gabriel Iglesias, his vocal impressions are insane.
Yeah.
Like the range of voices that he can do isn't like that. That
Uh-huh.
alone would be very unique, you know.
Big
So
time, yeah. And they flow
that's
very well with his character. Like that's the other thing too. Is he's not just like
yeah,
doing voices or just like doing sounds. It's like he's doing things like he does them in like the perfect way that it sounds like him. It sounds like his voice. It sounds like like part of his bit, and it's like and he does it in a funny way. And so that's definitely a part that because I've seen numerous comedians on I mean like when I don't know Kill Tony or whatever the podcast just because they have they cycle through so many. I have definitely seen comedians out in the LA area literally do like Gabriel Iglesias like voice impressions as part of their bit, and it's like you can just tip it, but it's just one of those things where you can tell when someone is like too idolized in a certain comedian. A lot of comics talk about doing Dave Attell when they started out, and you know,
I mean,
some,
I used to do Louis when I first. I was 100% Louis C.K.'s voice when I first started out.
hell yeah. I get that, and it's a very hard thing to avoid, and I think it's just like it just really shows that it's got something they got something that works, and it's hard not to want to emulate that, and so yeah, it's definitely one of those things where people have a long journey to find their voice, and I think they often think that they've found it a little sooner than they really have, but I think that just comes with confidence though, and definitely having representation on the scene helps with that, but also having like honesty amongst it.
Yeah, I mean, what I was ultimately trying to get at is like, and like I said, like I definitely think there's some sort of a boost on having a unique identity or a
Mm-hmm.
non-Caucasian male identity. I think you can get a boost out of that, but also like I think sometimes people use it as as like an excuse. So it's like I'm not getting booked because I'm another white dude, and it's like, well, no, you're not getting booked because you're not unique. Like find your own way
Yeah.
to be unique. Like, and some people, because of their identity, might have it a little bit easier to find, you know, what makes them unique. But at the same
Yeah.
time, like you know, what makes unique? Okay, well, it's not you're not gonna be able to sit on your identity because we've already had Jeff Foxworthy do every. We've already had, you know, like
Yeah, the whole blue collar comedy tour is like the
yeah,
epitome of just like
we've already
the
heard what Brown
lowest
White has
class white people.
to
Yeah.
say. Yeah,
Mm,
like you have to do something different.
exactly.
And so yeah, you definitely have like a challenge to find maybe something different that's just not like
Oh yeah.
using your identity as a crutch. But I don't think it's a hindrance to success in comedy at all. I have
No.
friends that I don't know. I see people use it too much as a crutch and like, or like as an
Yeah.
excuse, and I'm like, come on. It's
Right.
not because you're right. It's because you don't know how to write a punchline. It's
Yeah,
because your
exactly.
delivery is boring. Like,
Like whenever, yeah, and like that's the thing too, is whenever I see people who I mean, there is like like a line that I could, if I pointed out, would give proof to there being like um certain topics, like say I talk about some of my guy friends who are in comedy who are getting shows kind of regularly or starting to get shows again. It's like they've all been doing it minimum 6 months longer than me. Um and
yeah,
like and then like that, like for instance, like Dave Kilbride, who I love, is a one-liner comedian who does all one-liners, and he's the only one in the scene here in Des Moines at least that
exactly.
can do that, and they are typically all like pretty good. So like occasionally they're bad, but like they're typically all like pretty good. And so he has a very unique point to him, and he has a unique look to him as opposed to every other comedian in the scene. And so then he definitely has like more of something to him, and he's very likable. And then Cooper Patterson, he's very unique, and then we have, but then when you look at the reality of the whole thing, it's like, especially right now, I don't know what the numbers are going to be like when we come back from COVID, and then like everyone's just like safe to move about the world. Um, because I think because we did have more women available. I mean, like none of them had been doing it more than like 6 months at the max before COVID happened, and a lot of them I haven't seen out again, and which makes sense. But then there's also an all female show, and so it's um like all the ones that I know about are typically being put on the show, and that's all well and good.
Yeah,
And like it's just like that's what they're going for. That's who's available. It's like they're all like I know all of them, and so I'm like I'm on all of their sides. So it's just like I'm just supportive. I'm like, but then kind of with the representation thing again, we got like I think like one of the girls is Asian, one of the girls is black, and it's just like there's it yeah, I okay. So I always look at it like they're cool. So I just want to be supportive. Like if they were douchebags, obviously that's like really what the separation always is. But I always look at it as like whether or not like certain things just kind of line up, or maybe there's special circumstances. It's not healthy to look at it as a jealous, like I should have gotten that kind of way.
yeah,
You should just look at it as like a supportive kind of way, and then like any kind of jealousy that might happen to me is more of just like, oh, I want to get to that point, so I gotta try to be funnier. I'm not thinking like I should have gotten it over them. And so
yeah. No, and for sure, like you have to like I don't. Yeah, I always do my best to avoid um getting jealous, and that's one thing that Chicago's been huge. Like moving from a small scene like Des Moines to Chicago. Um, one of the motivating factors in the decision to move is like in Chicago, there's so much stage time. Like there's so like in Chicago, you have to message the different clubs and bookers and shows
yeah,
just because like there's so many comedians. Like you just have to like, I produce shows here too. I produce a show, I guess. No, it's a new roast battle show.
nice.
I used to produce a show called Late Night Five that I'll bring back when the pandemic ends. But you know, my whole thing was like shit. Sorry, my mind's fried.
It's all good.
Was like
We'll
so,
be
so,
wrapping
so
up here in a few minutes.
yeah, I'd tell people I'd like, hey, you have to reach out to me. And in Chicago, there's so many shows and venues and rooms that like you don't have to worry too much about stage time. Because
Yeah,
like I was even telling someone, it's like yesterday I was talking about some club. There's also a bunch of clubs in the suburb areas too, and there's some club in the suburbs, and he's like, yeah, well, you're never gonna get booked at this club just because they don't like your kind of act, blah blah blah. And it wasn't, this person wasn't saying this to me. It was just like a very like a very real, I think, criticism. It's like, not unless
right.
you're until you have more credits, you're not gonna get booked there just because of your act. And I was like, oh, that's fine. Like it
Yeah,
didn't like I was supposed to like Des Moines, if you ever got like for some reason you said something to get you barred out of Teehees or Lefties or something like in Des Moines, or I don't know, for some reason that the scene turned on you, like it'd be like you're over, like there's
yeah,
no, like you just can't do comedy. But in Chicago, if someone's like, hey, this is a South Side room and we only book comedians that are raised in the South Side, then you're just gonna go, okay, well then I'm just not gonna work that room. Like that's
right.
just like, that's fine. Or like, if a room books comedians that only tell a liberal perspective, then you're conservative. You're not going to get booked there. If a room only books, liberal comedians, and you're like a conservative leading comedian, like you're just not going to get booked there. Like the different rooms will know their crowds, and like some venues like Zany's Rosemont doesn't fall into the categories I was talking about earlier, but Zany's Rosemont knows their crowd is going to be like people that live in Rosemont, like suburban people. Right. So they're going to book acts that lead suburban people. But let's say you're like a weird experimental comedian that uses like absurd props. That's just not your room. Like you're not going to play Zany's Rosemont. And then the Laugh Factory knows that they're going to get in tourists.
Yeah.
And so maybe if you're weird and experimental, maybe the Laugh Factory is more susceptible because you're like a fun tourist show to watch.
Right. Yeah. So, exactly. Yeah.
But in Chicago, there's so much venues and so much opportunity that knowing who you are and knowing whether or not you work is fine. As opposed to Des Moines, there really is only a few rooms, and if you don't fit what the Des Moines scene is looking to book, then I think you're going to struggle to find rooms, which sucks. But
100%.
Or you start your own show. You start your own show and find people that
exactly. I always hang on to that myself. Like if I really try hard and it just and by whatever means I just don't get chances, I'll make my own. Like it's no big deal. But it's just just have a positive outlook on the whole thing. Matt, it's been great talking to you, man. I really love getting into it. Obviously, we didn't cover quite everything I wanted to get into, but it's just a matter of time. So let's do it again. We got more to talk about, so it won't even matter if it's on again soon. So, but you got anything coming up you want to plug?
I mean, I'm just doing shows in Chicago. I mean, I do the show in Des Moines once a month, crossing the Mississippi.
Hell yeah.
Look for that. Teehee's Comedy Club, their Facebook page will have it every month. So if you just follow Tees on Facebook, they'll have it. But if you're ever in Chicago, I also run a show now called Sticks and Stones. It's a roast battle show. Looking to make Chicago a little bit meaner. I'm sick and tired of this positivity. And I also run a show called Late Night 5. But apart from that, I do a lot of traveling. If you want to book me, you can Banwart.com or look me up on Facebook, Instagram, or not Facebook, Instagram. Or I do TikTok now. If anyone's on TikTok,
hell yeah,
check me out there too.
Big platform these days. All right, hell yeah. And then Jordan C Comedy, everything they came from the underground on everything. And thanks again. Thanks so much for being on, man. I appreciate it.
It was fun.
And Thank you for having me. Yeah, of course, anytime, dude. And we will see you next time on They Came from the Underground.